Welcome to Days of Roar, our Detroit Tiger podcast, brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorosh. I'm here with Detroit Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold after a very rigorous week for the Detroit Tigers, playing blah in the city of Chicago, and then coming back and playing some super fun baseball against the best team in the National League, the Chicago Cubs. 4-3 week. Tell me about it, Ev, as I sit here in the Baldwin Public Library in Birmingham, as Xfinity has let us down once again, right at the wrong time.
We're definitely not getting that Xfinity sponsorship now, but no, the Tigers, a 4-3 record this week. They went 2-2 versus Chicago White Sox at Guaranteed Rate Field. That is the worst team in the American League. And then they go 2-1 versus Chicago Cubs at Comerica Park. That is the best team in the National League. For me, the game of the week, easily Friday, June 6th, Comerica Park, the first of 3 sellouts for the series against the Cubs. You had a playoff atmosphere. You had Tarik Skubal on the mound. You had a ton of incredible defensive plays. Shout out Javier Báez. Shout out Zach McKinstry. Shout out Riley Greene. Shout out Dylan Dingler. Spencer Torkelson hits the go-ahead home run in the 6th inning. Kerry Carpenter makes a leaping catch at the wall in the 8th inning. Will Vest records 4 outs for his 10th save. Tarik Skubal, by the way, 1 run over 7 2/3 innings with 0 walks and 6 strikeouts against the Cubs. One of the best teams in baseball against left-handed starters. Tarik Skubal has not walked a batter since May 20th. He has not walked more than 1 batter in a start since April 2nd. He has a 2.2% walk rate and a 33.4% strikeout rate this season. His fastball keeps getting better. His changeup continues to be unhittable, and his command remains nearly perfect. The best pitcher in baseball did his thing once again, this time against the best team in the National League. But manager AJ Hinch, he pulled Skubal in favor of Will Vest against Seiya Suzuki. The reason? Suzuki destroys left-handed pitchers, but he's not as good against righties. AJ Hinch said, look, we got to get a righty on Seiya Suzuki there in that situation. You can't fault AJ's process there, just like you could not fault his process when he pulled Skubal at 90 pitches last week against the Royals. But anyway, Will Vest comes in. He has to face Suzuki, and Suzuki hits a middle fastball with 2 strikes and 2 outs. It looks like it's going to be a routine flyout, but that ball just kept carrying and carrying and carrying all the way to the wall. But there was Kerry Carpenter. Kerry Carpenter tracked it. He makes a leaping catch at the wall. I don't think it would have been a home run, but it would have hit the top of the wall had Kerry Carpenter not caught it. So that would have scored 2 runs because there were 2 runners on base at that point in the game. That would have scored 2 runs. It was the difference between 2-1 Tigers and 3-2 Cubs. That catch kept the score at 2-1 Tigers. And then you go and you can't talk about Friday's game without talking about Jahmai Jones. First game, first pitch, first swing, home run. He pinch hit for Carpenter in the bottom of the 8th. Against left-handed reliever Genesis Cabrera, which is the role Andy Ibanez used to occupy. And Jahmai Jones hits a first-pitch curveball for a solo home run. It pushes the Tigers' lead to 3-1. Yes, the Tigers demoted Andy Ibanez to AAA Toledo and called up Jahmai Jones before Friday's game. So that was the first pitch Jahmai Jones saw in a Tigers uniform. And it sounds like the Tigers just want Andy to figure some things out with his swing because, again, we talked about it last week. He's been really struggling against lefties. That's his role on the team, but it goes all the way back to last July. It's been almost a year of Andy Ibanez struggling against lefties. But for now, it's going to be Jahmai Jones in that right-handed hitting platoon role against left-handed pitchers. It's a cool story, too, because his father, Andre Jones, played 6 games for the Lions as a linebacker in 1992. His older brother, TJ Jones, played 42 games for the Lions as a wide receiver from 2015 to 2018. His father died in June 2011 at age 42. Jahmai was just 13 years old. Now, Jahmai hits a home run in the city where his dad and his brother played football, and he does it on the first pitch he sees in his Tigers debut. It's an amazing story, and I cannot wait to see more of Jahmai Jones. But yeah, it was a really fun week of baseball. Sunday's game was awesome as well, but for me, game of the week was Friday. It was so much fun. It felt like a playoff atmosphere, and the Tigers just keep doing their thing, Mark. They just keep winning games.
Well, first of all, for all the grief I like to give Scott Harris about other things, let's give Scott Harris a shout out on Jahmai Jones, which is, hey, you need to replace a guy that was integral to winning in the last 2 years in Andy Ibanez. And they go out in the offseason and almost get a duplicative player, does all similar things, plays outfield, plays second base, may be able to play third base, kills left-handed pitching, and they can plug him right in and hopefully either improve or at least maintain the status quo for AJ Hinch being the puppet master. So when you talk about front offices understanding how to do subtle things to keep the strategic advantage that they've somehow found over these last 120 games. Shout out to those guys.
And it's not just Jahmai Jones either, right? I mean, it's Andy Ibanez is a guy who's going to go down there, try to fix his swing and get right. But it's also Justin Henry Malloy. You look at him too. He is that same kind of hitter. Now, he's not eligible to be recalled because he was recently sent down. He can only come back if it's an injury. He's got to wait a certain number of days for a non-injury to come back. We might see Justin Henry Malloy at some point here in the future, but right now it is Jahmai Jones. But the Tigers have a couple of these guys who are right-handed hitters who hit against left-handed pitching because that is exactly how opposing teams target the Tigers. They take a guy like Kerry Carpenter and they say, okay, we do not want to face Kerry Carpenter in a big situation, so we will bring in a left-handed reliever to face Kerry Carpenter, knowing that our chances of getting Kerry Carpenter out are exponentially greater than leaving in a right-handed pitcher. That is how opposing teams counter the Tigers. It is by bringing in a left-handed reliever to face Kerry Carpenter. So the Tigers not only have Andy Ibanez, but yeah, you're right. They have Jahmai Jones. They have Jay Hen. They have guys that can step up and pinch hit in those situations. That is a spot where the Tigers, it needs to be a strength for them. If they want to win games, it needs to be a strength because again, biggest moment of the game, teams are going to target Kerry Carpenter and the Tigers have to be able to counter. It is what makes AJ Hinch so good is having that chess piece to counter when they go and they attack Kerry Carpenter. That's exactly what Jahmai Jones brings. It's what Jay Hen brings. And it's a good thing, to your point, that Scott Harris went out and got a couple of these guys not named Andy Ibanez to fill in a moment like this.
Hey, look, we keep trying to explain to everyone how AJ Hinch works. The words are TRUST. AJ Hinch has to operate on trust. It's first and foremost defense if he puts you into a bench role. And then you are going to have some hitting requirements based on your handedness. But you have to play defense. And if you don't understand that after Friday and Sunday, I really can't help you understanding how AJ Hinch manages a baseball game. Tarek Skubal has never received more defensive support than he did Friday night. There had to be 5 purely outstanding baseball plays. So it's just ridiculous. The play Riley Greene made in the first inning will be the first thing I discuss with Riley Greene when Evan gets him on this show one day, which was super hazy day, crazy time of night, high fly ball, full stands, terrible background, some wind. And if you don't think the degree of difficulty on making that catch going into the corner at the fence was a 10, then you've obviously never played any real baseball in your life. It was amazing. And he made it look easier than it was. It was a nightmare to track that. And they made all kinds of plays like that. McKinstry, Carpenter. It was just a show. And essentially, the Chicago Cubs found out, is there one team in baseball that plays their style better than they do? Yes, it's the Detroit Tigers. And they weren't even at maximum capacity of how they play. They just out-executed Chicago 2 times in 3 games. And that was the story of the weekend. A lot of fun being there. I was there yesterday. What a blast.
Yeah, Mark was there on Sunday, and entering Monday, June 9th, the Tigers have the best record in MLB at 43-24 overall. They're a half game ahead of the New York Mets, 2 games ahead of the Chicago Cubs, 2.5 games ahead of the New York Yankees, and 3.5 games ahead of the Los Angeles Dodgers. As for the AL Central standings, the Tigers lead the Minnesota Twins by 7 games, the Cleveland Guardians by 7.5 games, and the Kansas City Royals by 8.5 games. The postseason odds, according to Fangraphs, 96% to make the playoffs, 77.4% to win the AL Central, and 8.9% to win the World Series, trailing only the Dodgers at 20.5%, the Yankees at 15.9%, and the Mets at 9.6%. So the Tigers have the best record in baseball, but only the 4th best odds to win the World Series. That makes sense. Either way, we've come a long way from a 0.2% chance to make the postseason on August 11th, 2024. Since then, the Tigers have a 74-37 record in 111 games. Let me repeat that to you all. The Tigers have 74 wins in their last 111 games. And what we saw over the weekend against the Cubs make me wonder, is this a World Series preview? And I think we do need to talk about this because let's paint the picture. It's a chilly October night in Detroit. Game 1 of the World Series. Tarek Skubal on the mound. Kyle Tucker in the batter's box. You got 2 smart managers. AJ Hinch making chess moves for the Tigers. Craig Counsell making chess moves for the Cubs. It's a rematch of the 1907, 1908, 1935, and 1945 World Series. The Cubs won the first 2. The Tigers won the second 2. Mark, who says no to Tigers versus Cubs in the 2025 World Series? We're a long ways away from that, but how much fun would that be all things considered.
I can't think of a better opponent, a more fun opponent for the national stage of a World Series than the Detroit Tigers and the Chicago Cubs. Do I think there's a long way to go and a lot of moves left to be made on rosters? Oh, hell yes. So am I predicting that to be the outcome? It's too far to go, man. There's too many moves to make, too much improvement to be had for both teams. The Tigers have problems to solve. We'll talk about a few of them, but that was a damn blast down there. Who called me at 1:00 in the morning after he sat in the press box and wrote a bunch of stories on literally what was Saturday morning after Friday night and just wanted to tell me what a great time he had? Was that I'm in Petzold that called me at 1:00 in the morning as he was driving home? It was, because he had such a damn good time. What a job, man. That's a pretty good job you got there. All right, let's go to question one of the big two. Since May 16th, the Detroit Tigers offense ranks 26th in batting average, 26th in OPS, and 25th in WRC plus. It's a stretch of 23 games. Do we need to be concerned?
Let's dig into the numbers and then we'll talk about it. In 44 games before May 16th, 6th in MLB with a 116 WRC plus, 5th in MLB with a 261 batting average, 6th in MLB with a 758 OPS, 14th in MLB with a 9% walk rate, and 19th in MLB with a 22.9% strikeout rate. In 23 games since May 16th, 25th in MLB with a 90 WRC plus, 26th in MLB with a 229 batting average, 26th in MLB with a 667 OPS, 19th in MLB with a 7.6% walk rate, and 26th in MLB with a 24.6% strikeout rate. So the Tigers have gone from being a borderline top 5 offense in baseball in pretty much all of your major categories aside from walk rate and strikeout rate to now being a borderline bottom 5 offense in baseball. What should we actually expect from them? Probably somewhere in between. They're probably just a middle of the pack offense, to be completely fair. And we've just seen both ends of the spectrum here without really any middle ground. I think what's important to talk about is that the struggles on offense have not led to a significant change in the win-loss record. They won 66% of their games before May 16th, and they've won 61% of their games since May 16th. So they've won 66% before and 61% after. I think that's what's important to note here. The Tigers continue to find ways to win games, even when their offense isn't performing like a top 5 offense in baseball. That's part of what makes them such a good team. Always finding ways to win and also always bouncing back after a bad loss or a couple losses in a row. Like, yes, the Tigers are performing like a bottom 5 offense in baseball. They have. That is just the plain facts. Like, the numbers do not lie. But here's why I'm not worried, because you go and you look at since May 16th, Wenzel Perez, 180 WRC plus, Dylan Dingler, 140 WRC plus, Riley Greene, 127 WRC plus, Gleyber Torres, 120 WRC plus, Spencer Torkelson, 119 WRC plus, Zach McKinstry, 118 WRC plus, Parker Meadows, 108 WRC plus, Colt Keith, 101 WRC plus. Remember, the league average for WRC plus is 100. So the Tigers have several players, many players, performing better than average as MLB hitters. Like, yes, there are some dead weight. You got Javier Báez, Trey Sweeney, Jake Rogers. Kerry Carpenter has been below average, even though he had the 3 homers last Monday and then the 3 hits on Sunday. But despite the dead weight of Jake Rogers and Javier Báez and Trey Sweeney recently, the guys that you want hitting are still hitting. Dingler, Greene, Torres, Torkelson. Like, if those guys are producing, the Tigers are going to be able to find ways to win games. And that's why I'm not worried where the offense is at right now. I'm closely monitoring the way things are trending, because you can't just have Dylan Dingler and Gleyber Torres producing. Like, if Tork and Greene slump, that is not a recipe for success. The Dylan Dingler, Gleyber Torres show is not going to get it done. And we've seen that a couple of times where it's been Dylan Dingler and Gleyber Torres getting on base, and that's pretty much it. But for the most part, we've seen Spencer Torkelson and Riley Greene get on base, and they've done damage. And so you combine that with what Dylan Dingler's doing and Gleyber Torres and Zach McKinstry. Like, that's why I think the Tigers are going to be okay. And by the end of the season, they probably settle in somewhere between, 10th and 15th in most of the offensive categories. Probably more closer to 15th. But Mark, that's why I'm not that concerned. The numbers don't lie. Like, 8 teams had at least 14 wins since May 16th. The Cubs, the Rays, the Tigers, the Yankees, the Astros, the Mets, the Brewers, the Blue Jays. Which team of those teams have scored the fewest runs? It's the Tigers. with 81 runs in 23 games. All the other teams with 14 or more wins have scored more runs than the Tigers. So yes, the offense is down, but the Tigers keep finding ways to win, and their big producers are still producing in big moments. That's why I'm not too concerned. But we are now a month away from the All-Star break, Mark. And again, the numbers don't lie. The Tigers offense has gotten worse from where it was at the beginning of the season. Where are you at? Because I'm not concerned right now.
I am zero concerned. In fact, you and I had a little discussion about this, but we're pretty much on the same page. I took a shorter time horizon than you did. I did the last 14 days, pretty much got the same answers. Tigers are 9-4 in those 13 games. And the same people who are hitting are still hitting. The same people who are not hitting are not hitting. They have a problem at shortstop. They have an emerging problem potentially at third base. I'm not too worried about Javier Báez. Javi's actually having really, really good swings. He is expanding the strike zone to add more and not walking. But I think with, the proper input from Gleyber Torres in his ear, he'll get back to taking a few more pitches. He'll get back to hitting. He actually has hit quite a few balls hard just at people. What was really interesting, if you want to understand how the Tigers operate, Riley Greene, Golden Sombrero on Saturday. I think he swung 10 times, made contact 0 times. Sunday, strikes out, first at bat, maybe a questionable pitch, still strikes out, comes up in a big spot, second time up. All I can say from my beautiful vantage point, 80 feet away, was hit the ball to left field, Riley. And goodness knows that's what happened. And it was a huge base hit to put him up 2-0. Did some things well later on. At the end of the day, yes, Riley Greene is going to swing and miss people, but he's also going to get a lot of big hits. Guess who else does that kind of stuff? It would be Spencer Torkelson, who had the big hit Friday night, who had a big hit yesterday, who keeps getting huge hits in leverage, who keeps whining that he's hitting under 200 in a 70 at-bat span. Fans. Who's not paying attention to when he's getting his hits? Fans. And so all I can say to you people, they're winning. Shut the hell up. They're winning. It's a long season. These things happen. People slump. And good teams find ways to win. Guess what your team's been doing? Finding a way to win. Do I think that they'll finish 15th in offense in baseball? I don't. I think they'll finish somewhere between 7 and 10. I think much better hitting is coming soon, and they have a much better lineup. They haven't even got the straw that stirs the drink, Parker Meadows, to really contribute offensively yet, but you can see it's in there. And boy, that's going to be fun. I told Ev, Gleyber Torres and Parker Meadows at the top taking pitches. What a beautiful thing. Because Parker Meadows, one of the most fun things about him that people ignore, if you want to walk Parker Meadows, he will allow you to walk him. You know who will not allow you to walk him? Kerry Carpenter will not allow you. He's swinging. He needs to swing less, actually, to be really blunt about it. And if he would swing at better pitches, I think his production would skyrocket. But at the same time, 1-2 in that order, followed by any way you want to mix it. Can't wait. Let's go to question 2 of the big 2. Question 2 of the big 2. Colt Keith is getting practice reps at third base and even played an inning at third base against the White Sox, if you want to call standing there. What does Colt Keith at third base mean to the Detroit Tigers, Evan Petzold?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here because we'll see how much it actually happens. But Colt Keith hadn't played third base since September 5th, 2023 in AAA Toledo. Tigers have avoided playing Cole at third base for more than a year because of a labrum injury in his right shoulder that he suffered June 9th, 2022 in High West Michigan when he dove back into first base while on the bases during a pickoff attempt. He didn't get the surgery, but he missed 4 months. Again, he did not get surgery. There's been some inaccurate reporting out there. No shoulder surgery for Colt Keith. But since then, he has tweaked that same shoulder diving for balls on defense in 2023 and 2024, missing games, but avoiding the injured list. The injury has limited his throwing arm, which is why the Tigers played him at second base in 2024 and first base here in 2025. I asked the Tigers several times if he would play third base, including as recently as the offseason when they signed Gleyber Torres to play second base. And every time the Tigers told me, no, Colt Keith will not play third base for the Tigers. But here we are. Colt Keith is getting reps at third base for the Tigers in 2025. As for the injury, it sounds like the Tigers are confident that his arm is capable of handling the throws from third base to first base. But I'm not sure if that confidence is a good thing because Colt Keith's arm strength, it ranks in the 14th percentile among MLB players. Only 1% percentile rank higher than Gleyber Torres, whom the Tigers won't even consider at third base. So Colt Keith, his arm strength is in the 14th percentile. Gleyber Torres, his arm strength is in the 13th percentile. And the Tigers have said that Gleyber Torres does not have a strong enough arm to play third base. So I'm not so sure how Colt Keith has a strong enough arm to play third base when Gleyber Torres doesn't, and the arm strength is pretty much the exact same. It sounds like the Tigers are just trying to avoid Gleyber Torres at third base at all costs, even though it kind of makes the most sense, right? Like we've talked about this before. The Tigers have a logjam on the right side of the infield. You got Spencer Torkelson at first base and Gleyber Torres at second base. That leaves the Tigers with no choice but to put Colt Keith at designated hitter. And that forces Kerry Carpenter, whose hamstring is about to fall apart, to play right field, unless the Tigers decide to bench Torque or Torres or Keith, but they don't want to bench those guys. And when Carpenter is in right field, that limits the playing time for Wenceel Perez. Like there is your logjam. If Torres played third base, then you'd have Torque at first, Colt at second, Gleyber at third, Kerry at DH, and then you can play whoever you want in right field. Maybe it's Wenceel Perez, maybe it's Jahmai Jones, maybe it's Matt Vierling when he comes back from the injured list. But you got to solve the right side of the infield logjam, and you need to get Kerry in the DH spot as much as possible to protect his health. His hamstring is already halfway, 3/4 of the way cooked. Like, how can you keep running him out there to play right field when you know it increases his injury risk? Like, significantly increases his injury risk. Like, that seems reckless on the part of the Tigers by putting Kerry Carpenter in right field as much as they are. But since the Tigers won't move Torres to third base, whether it's because of core arm strength or because they promised him he would be their everyday second base when they signed him, ding, 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 maybe Colt Keith can solve that logjam. Like, let's run it back. Torque at first, Gleyber at second, Colt at third, Kerry at DH, and then you can play whoever you want in right field. The only problem is, what if Colt Keith gets injured as a result of making throws from third base to first base? I mean, he injured his shoulder in 2022, and then he re-aggravated it again in 2023 and 2024. So it's 3 years in a row of the shoulder being a problem. What are the odds he re-aggravates it in 2025? Like, those are things that we need to be talking about. So are you okay with the risk of losing Colt Keith to a shoulder injury? I think that's a fair question. And then even when Matt Vierling comes back, it's easy to say, oh, well, Matt Vierling will just play third base. That doesn't make things any easier. Matt Vierling plays third base, you're still stuck with the same Torque, Gleyber, Colt logjam on the right side of the infield, with one of them DHing and Carp in right field. Like Matt Vierling at third, Gleyber at second, Torque at first, Colt at DH. Where do you put Kerry? Oh, you put him in right field. His hamstring's about to fall off. Like, it's a problem. So, and additionally, like, I like Matt Vierling, but I'm not sold that he's the answer at third base either. Like, he's a below average defender there. He's got a lingering shoulder injury that he hasn't been able to shake. I mean, that happened before spring training, like very early in spring training, before games even started. He had the shoulder injury that flared up, and then it became a rotator cuff injury that shut him down. And then he rehabbed for 3 months. He came back for 4 games, and then he's back on the shelf again. So I'm not sold that he's going to be able to be the answer at third base either. And he's a candidate for regression offensively too. So, and he also, again, Matt Vierling at third base still creates this logjam on the right side of the infield and forces Kerry Carpenter to play right field. So those two things are not good for the Detroit Tigers. Kerry Carpenter playing right field is not good for the Tigers, and they're doing it over and over and over again. So the only way this works, like the only way to save Kerry Carpenter's hamstring and get all of your above average bats in the lineup, is to put Gleyber Torres or Colt Keith at third base. And the Tigers have elected to test things out with Colt Keith. We'll see if it goes anywhere, but they have elected to test that, and we'll see if they move forward and how much playing time he actually gets there. The other problem too is Tigers third baseman, they rank 29th in MLB with a 556 OPS. Who's responsible? Zach McKinstry, Andy Ibanez, Javier Báez, and Jace Young. Colt Keith would be a significant upgrade at third base offensively with his 712 OPS. But I have arm strength concerns with his right arm, and I have injury concerns with his right shoulder. We'll see what the Tigers do, but they're willing to test it out, and we'll see how much playing time he actually gets there.
It's pretty simple. What you finished with is the solution. Now let me add a piece of data that you didn't discuss. Who do you think's throwing harder this year, Colt Keith or Trey Sweeney? The answer is Colt Keith has a higher throwing velocity than Trey Sweeney.
It's all right about the same. I mean, Trey Sweeney, I just looked it up, 14th percentile. Colt Keith, 14th percentile. Gleyber Torres, 13th percentile. Not a lot of arm strength in those Tigers infielders.
Well, but my point is, time to find out. If Colt Keith can play a manageable third base, that helps them a ton. And all I can tell you is, when you were a youth, when you were just a child, before you had a driver's license, Nicholas Castellanos and Miguel Cabrera both played third base on some pretty good Detroit Tiger baseball teams, and they were much worse than Colt Keith will be at third base. They were tragically bad. So if they could play through Castellanos and Cabrera at third, interested to see if Colt Keith can play third base, because maybe in a bigger picture, if they're super lucky, he can do that in 2026 also. Solves a lot of problems for him. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we have Jesse Rogers from ESPN, one of the best beat writers in America, one of Evan Petzold's favorite beat writers, one of the smartest baseball guys on the planet. We'll be back in 60.
Everyone, I would like to welcome Jesse Rogers, ESPN reporter covering the Chicago Cubs and Chicago White Sox, to the Days of Roar podcast for the first time. He just finished covering the Tigers, Cubs, and White Sox over the past week, so we have a lot to discuss. Jesse, thank you for joining the show.
You got it anytime. What's going on?
Hey, so you don't cover the Tigers every day, but you just spent a week around this team, both in Chicago and in Detroit. You talked to AJ Hinch, you talked to Tarek Skubal, you talked to Javier Báez, you talked to Spencer Torkelson and Riley Greene. What are your thoughts on the best team in baseball, the 2025 Detroit Tigers?
Well, they've taken a step in terms of being that complete team everybody wants them to be, especially offensively. They really have come a long way. It used to be sort of a detriment to be hitting in that ballpark. They've made it an advantage. I'm sort of surprised they're at the bottom in stolen bases, yet they run the bases so well. But really, it's all based on that starting pitching. I mean, few teams have an ace like Tarek Skubal. In fact, nobody does. So when you have that, everybody filters off of that. Jack Flaherty and the rest of them. It's just a winning attitude that I think starts with Skubal. And AJ Hinch is as sharp as they've come. Scott Harris is pretty sharp and has developed a roster that is really usable on the road and at home. And guys have taken steps. It's a player development success story when you talk about where Torkelson has come from. And certainly, Riley Greene's progression. Kerry Carpenter is a monster. He can hit anybody out. So it's been a bit of a slow burn. And then, of course, it comes quickly. That happens to a lot of teams in a rebuild situation. There's a lot in common with the Cubs in the sense that everything they've touched has turned to gold. So it's a little bit of fortune combined with a lot of good decision-making and player development. If you want to, use the Cubs and Tigers in the same sentence, AJ Hinch and Craig Counsell about as smart as they come.
Jesse, before I get to Javi Báez, I kind of wanted to draw a parallel because, look, AJ Hinch is, I would argue, the best manager in Major League Baseball, but Craig Counsell and AJ Hinch, very similar in style, will use anyone, very empowering to their players, and the style of play of the two teams very similar. So I wanted to know if you could comment a little bit about that, because there's very few guys in Craig Counsell's league as a manager. You can see what he's done in Chicago, but AJ Hinch and Craig Counsell, very similar.
Yeah. The way I put it is some managers get it and some don't. Those are two guys that just get it. They understand all aspects of a baseball team. That includes player acquisition. I guarantee you Hinch and Counsell have a big voice in those front offices. And then, of course, player development and the little stuff. I mean, Craig Counsell told me he spent more time on base running with this Cubs team than any previous team ever. And that includes all those Brewers teams that run the base as well. But maybe because the Cubs needed that attention to detail. So he addressed it. But it's interesting. A year ago at this time, I didn't think Craig Counsell was having a very good season. I think as the newcomer, he kind of sat back and watched and wanted to see what he had. And it was kind of a waste of a year in a lot of ways. But he's taken that knowledge and more than made up for it. And so I just think they both get it. They just don't let anything pass by them. And they understand even now in this day and age what it takes to win. And that includes a lot of athleticism within the structure of a team because of the new rules. And the way the both teams run the bases is the sort of the line you can draw between both managers.
So you were around the Cubs when Tigers president of baseball operations, Scott Harris, was in Chicago. He worked under Theo. He worked under Jed Hoyer. Are you surprised the Tigers are doing what they're doing in his third full season, even without any of his draft picks in the big leagues yet?
Of course, I'm surprised they have the best record in baseball. But what he learned under Theo is what you'd expect, sort of the team building aspect to it. And what Theo was really good at, and I think Scott Harris is good at, is the ability to move within an organization from the scouts to the nerds to the analytical people, even into the locker room. Theo never played at that level, Scott Harris didn't. But I think they are as comfortable as an executive is going to be within a locker room. Not that they hang out there a lot, but they can relate to players even though they haven't played. They certainly can relate to all the front office needs. And even scouts, some of the older scouts and stuff. And I know that's changed over, but they're just able to move within an organization very well. And I think Scott Harris mastered that and learned that under Theo. And I think you're seeing it applied. He also has a very good understanding of what it takes. You're seeing sort of peak version of Scott Harris right now after years of learning both in Chicago and in San Francisco.
You covered Javi Báez in Chicago when he played for the Cubs. What has been your impression of his improved performance in 2025 after 3 of the worst seasons in his career?
Yeah, I'm writing a story about him for ESPN.com that'll be posted later this week. And look, it's not a thing where you have to dig very deep. The guy got healthy. I don't think anybody realized how bad his hip was impacting him. People also talk about the fact that Detroit wasn't winning. He was the lone star on a team when he got there. Yeah, I guess so. I don't want to give Javi that excuse. You're a professional and you should have performed even just less than enthusiastic conditions around the Tigers. But actually, I think it's the injury just started to tear him down, and he got healthy. Finally, he admitted to me he was stubborn about it. He didn't want to go under the knife and end his season last year. But I think he realized the Tigers are going to pass him up. And I'm going to be left behind. I may not have a job. And he finally just gave into it. AJ Hinch and him had a conversation about a week before he came back to Wrigley Field for the first time. I know he wanted to turn, but that was a disaster. He went 4 with 4 strikeouts. And I think that was the final straw. In fact, he told me that was the low point. So I think the rebound starts with getting healthy. And in fact, he's not that different of a player. He's still swinging at the sweepers and the sliders, but he's doing damage on fastballs, on things in his own. Something he couldn't do with his hip injury. His defense is as good as ever. He cares. He just doesn't always show it with his body language. So look, they're not asking him to be the Javi Báez in 2018 when he finished second in MVP voting. They just want him to bat ninth and contribute. And he's doing that. Everybody loves the redemption story. He's got one. And he's already got his signature game that went over Boston. So what's not to like about Javi Báez's reclamation project going on right now?
Jesse, let's talk a little bit about the Cubs because they are a pretty fascinating story. They won 83 games last year. No one really expected a lot. They go into the offseason and they get Kyle Tucker, who is arguably one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball, really a straw that stirs the drink. They get PCA to transform himself from a questionable hitter to a guy that if you said he was going to hit 17 homers in 2025, you'd have been happy about it. He's got 17 now. So when you add in how well the starting pitching threw against us, they've really optimized their players. Tell us about why the Cubs are so good.
I think that's a good word. I think they have optimized their players. I think Craig Counsell has a lot to do with that. And also just the cycle of the team. Jed Hoyer ripped apart the last team, the World Series team in 2021. Good Javi Báez, among other people. And it took a few years to get him back to this point. And it's all come together. This is peak version of the current Cubs right now, even a little bit better because no one thought Pico Armstrong would be this good. The aggressive move to trade for Kyle Tucker, I thought was great. He's a difference maker in a lineup that hasn't had one. But then you get an unexpected performance out of PCA, and here we go. Now you're off to the races. You have 2 stars. Both can hit for power. Both can run the bases. It's impacting people around him. I'm convinced Seiya Suzuki is having his best year because of all the guys around doing damage. It's trickled down. The offense is actually better than the 2016 team that won the World Series, if for no other reason than there's a DH. And 1 through 9, the Cubs are really dangerous. There's no point in their lineup where you can just take it off and think it's going to be easy because either there's speed or there's slug in there. I think they're a great extra inning team for that reason. Doesn't matter where you start in the lineup. Someone that's on second can run, and someone that's on at the plate it can slug a little bit, including their rookie at the bottom of the order, Matt Shaw. So it's like peak version with some unexpected surprise like PCA and their catching situation, Carson Kelly, a newcomer. I do worry a little bit about them on the mound. A couple young guys in Ben Brown and Kate Horton. Kate Horton got outpitched by Jack Flaherty yesterday. Imanaga's been hurt, but he's due back. They don't have a household name. I think they're going to be extremely aggressive in the trade market, top rotation starter. So we'll see how that all plays out. But it's a bunch of things coming together, not unlike the Tigers, but it starts with Tucker and PCA.
You mentioned Kyle Tucker, a superstar in this game. He is going to get paid when he becomes a free agent after this season. I want to ask you about another superstar, though. Tarek Skubal, he is going to get paid as well when he becomes a free agent after the 2026 season. I wrote about the likelihood of $400 million this past December coming out of the winter meetings. He would be the first pitcher in MLB history to sign for $400 million. Jesse, does that number sound realistic to you? $400 million for Tarek Skubal after the 2026 season?
It does. It does. Yeah. I mean, we're going in that direction. We already have a $300 million one. Eric, right? He's the first $300 million, I believe, right? First $300 million pitcher. If I think he will get to that point. I mean, the going rate in general is basically pay these guys until they're 40. How old will Skubal be after 26?
Tarek Skubal right now is 28 years old. So I think he's going to be 29 or 30 after 2026.
It's, you kind of use 40 years old as your test. If you're 27, maybe you get 12 years. If you're 29, maybe you get 10 years. If it's 10 years and $400 million, it will not surprise me. Now, if he shows one sign of arm problems, changes in the next year or so, assuming he gets the free agency, maybe he signs up with Detroit. So maybe there's a little bit of a hometown discount if he stays and it's 380 or 370. And this got Boras, so you have to think max dollar for him and most likely be in free agency.
You talked about how good the Chicago Cubs are, their offense, maybe some concerns about their pitching staff, but you said, 1 through 9, you cannot take a pitch off if you're a pitcher. There are no easy passes there. How about the Tigers though? Because again, you have a touch for what's going on around the league. Do you think the Tigers, with what they have, and what you learned this past week, can this team actually win the World Series? And if not right now, what upgrades do you think that they need to get there? Like, what do you think about trading for Bo Bichette if the Blue Jays are sellers at the July 31st trade deadline, maybe to push the Tigers over the top, maybe a reliever or two? Like, what do you think about their chances? And if not, what do they need?
I would think about adding a slugger just to be safe. Marcell Ozuna probably would be available. I mean, I'm not sure of all the permutations on where they play and who's DH and all that. But that's the one thing about AJ Hinch. He can figure it out. But I would probably add a slugger. Now, everyone that is a contender would look for pitching. You're always trying to fortify there. So, but all things being equal, they probably need a slugger over a pitcher. They do so well with the bullpen. Vest has emerged as the back end guy. So you like him. You always add a rotation October guy to pair with Skubal a little bit higher up, even though Flaherty has that experience. But I would add a slugger. I would just, pair Kerry Carpenter and Torkelson and Greene with one other guy if I can, to be stadium proof, so to speak. Let teams come into Detroit and figure out how to slug while the Tigers have been doing it all year, so to speak.
We do have a couple of questions about the Chicago White Sox before we let you go, because you do cover the White Sox as well. The first question is about ownership. Justin Ishbia, who grew up in Birmingham, went to Michigan State. He is lined up to be the next owner of the White Sox. Current owner Jerry Reinsdorf and potential future owner Justin Ishbia have entered a long-term agreement that could lead to Ishbia taking over the White Sox at some point between 2029 and 2034. But there seems to be a lot of gray area here. Can you explain what's going on with the White Sox and how is this going to impact the White Sox if there is an ownership change at some point?
Well, it can only impact them in a positive way. It can only impact them in a positive way because this current owner is not spending money on anything. So an ownership change is music to the ears of Sox fans. They're starting over, and Chris Getz is off to an okay start. He's made some decent trades. People didn't love the Fetty 3-teamer trade he made last year, but he certainly got some talent back for Garrett Crochet. There's at least a foundation there to work off of. I think Will Venable is the right manager at the right moment. He's not trying to do too much. He's not too earnest, but he's your classic team at the beginning of a rebuild. This is almost the easy part, collecting talent and letting them grow a little bit. The harder part comes as you move along through this rebuild. But I think the goal would be the team gets good. There's a new stadium maybe on the horizon. There's an ownership change on the horizon, and maybe it's a perfect storm where it all matches up in 3 or 4 or 5 years. So I think that's the best you could say about the Sox. Maybe they're on a path to something more bright, but we're years away from it happening.
We know the Ishbia family in Detroit, longtime family. Believe it or not, their father may be the smartest one out of the three of them. if you do know the family. I tweeted something out earlier this week when the story started breaking that I thought the Chicago White Sox were probably the best team in Major League Baseball to buy. You have an unbelievable baseball city. You have the worst stadium in baseball besides Tampa. And I mean, the expectations are so low. Starting over again with somebody a little more modern in thought, and the opportunity is amazing for the White Sox. And I'm really happy to see that Jerry Reinsdorf finally is willing to pass it down. You know, he is about 2,000 years old and hasn't really paid much attention to the White Sox in probably a decade.
Well, that's the weird part. He doesn't really pay attention to the Bulls. He does love baseball. And the scary part is he has paid attention to the White Sox, and look what's happened. So that's been a problem. Yeah, you guys know the history as well from the Detroit area there. And I think that eventually this is going to be a good thing, but it's a long, road to get there. It's a long road to get there. But most people are excited about the possibilities of an owner like Ishbia. It's going to be interesting because it doesn't take much, right? You mentioned a great team to buy because it's at its lowest point. So can only go up. Literally, I mean, the Chicago Blackhawks had an owner who would not put the home games on TV. Okay. He passed away. The team went to his son. His own son immediately reversed his dad's policies and put home games on TV. And he was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Like, how hard is it to make that decision? Let's put the home games on TV. So I feel like Ishbia is in a similar spot. Let's let the payroll be mid-pack and he's going to look like a genius. So that he can only go up. He can only go up. And so I think he's got a great opportunity because of the things you just mentioned. It's a great city, even for a second team in town.
Last thing on the White Sox, you mentioned that this could be years away. So Chris Getz, Will Venable, tell me about those guys. Like, do you think those are the dudes who ultimately lead the White Sox back to winning ways? Or are those guys maybe more like bridging the gap here in this rebuild? What do you think about Chris Getz, Will Venable?
Yeah, I can't say I know for sure. Obviously, very young in both their careers. There are probably more good signs than bad. I'm not sure everybody would agree with me when it comes to Getz, but all I can see is what's in front of me. They've revamped their player development department. There's a slew of young players there that are starting to grow. I think Getz is growing into the job. I think both guys have a chance. Like, they haven't shown me, oh God, they have no chance. I think Will Venable needs to grow into the job a little bit more, but he'll be given that chance. So I would say there's a chance that they're there, that there'll be success, but I haven't seen enough to know for sure. There's no slam dunk either way, good or bad.
All right, Jesse. Thanks again for coming on the Days of Roar podcast. You are one of the best in the business. Let's do this again if the Tigers and Cubs meet in the World Series, okay?
Should be interesting, guys. Have a great rest of the season.
Everyone, that was Jesse Rogers, Chicago Cubs and Chicago White Sox reporter for ESPN. We have more to discuss about the Tigers, with a focus on Riley Greene and Kerry Carpenter. But first, let's take a break.
We're back. Thank you to Jesse Rogers. Great to talk baseball with him. Let's touch on Riley Greene. Riley Greene leads Major League Baseball with 86 strikeouts. He was the antithesis of kind of what's going on with that. Evie wrote a really interesting piece this week about it. Do you think he can fix the problem? Because he sure seemed aware of it. And I'm curious if it's a big deal or not a big deal.
I think it's a big deal when you put it in the context of who Riley Greene is as a player. Like, right now, he is an all-star player. I think that there is a world in which Riley Greene becomes an MVP caliber player, but he won't get there until he stops swinging and missing, stops striking out so much. And what that really comes back to is he's chasing way too often. Like, the one thing that AJ Hinch said to Riley Greene from the day that he made it into the big leagues was get a good pitch to hit. Get a good pitch to hit. That's been the message over and over and over again. And Riley Greene did a great job of sticking to it last year. This time around, not so much. He's not done a good job of sticking to that. He's chasing a lot of pitches outside of the zone, and it's caused for some real problems for him when it comes to making that next step from all-star to MVP, which again, I believe Riley Greene is capable of doing. To get there, he just needs to stop chasing pitches outside of the strike zone. If he cuts down on the chase, he will cut down on swing and miss. And if he cuts down on swing and miss, he will cut down on strikeouts. And if he cuts down on strikeouts, all while putting the ball in play more often, then we're talking about MVP caliber performance. Here's the data. Riley Greene, when he swings at pitches in the zone, 335 batting average, 974 OPS, 23.6% whiff rate, all 13 home runs. Riley Greene, when he swings at pitches out of the zone, 157 batting average, 493 OPS, 50% whiff rate, 0 home runs. Some players, like Javier Báez in his prime, are great hitters on pitches outside of the zone. That's why old Javi was so good despite chasing and whiffing. But Riley Greene is a terrible hitter on pitches out of the zone. When he swings out of the zone, he misses 50% of the time. Gleyber Torres, for example, when he swings out of the zone, he only misses like 35% of the time. Riley Greene does not get hits. He does not do damage. He does nothing other than strike out when he chases pitches. So that's where it starts. Stop chasing so many pitches out of the zone. His chase rate has gotten worse. 23% in 2024 to 32% in 2025, an increase of 9%. He needs to get back to staying in the zone like he did in 2024. He's been getting fooled by sliders and changeups, especially below the zone for chase. He's talked about needing to focus on keyholing. That's one pitch in one spot. Just focus on that. And if you don't get it, take everything else. Don't swing. And he's trying to get back to that. And he did such a good job of that last year, but he's struggling to get back to it. He's been getting fooled a lot by those sliders and changeups, especially below the zone for chase. He's got to start to take those pitches. Otherwise, the swing and miss is going to continue. Like, again, he's worse in the big leagues when it comes to strikeouts. And that's not going to change unless he starts laying off those pitches that he's chasing.
I'm going to give you a short and sweet answer to this. You know who's a really cerebral baseball player? Riley Greene. You know, as every bit of data that you just recited, Riley Greene. You know how sophisticated the hitting cage is that they've built for the Tigers to hit in now, where you get to watch every pitcher you're going to face, every release point, every shape of every pitch the Detroit Tigers have it for all their hitters, and they all hang out together at the cage. If you've listened to Riley discuss it, do I think Riley will at some point in time start improving exactly what you discuss? I 100% believe that. It may take a month. It may take 2 months, but before we're done this year, the walk rate will continue to escalate. The whiff rate will continue to decline. And when that happens, look out, because as you said, when Riley Greene is swinging at strikes, it's an ugly, ugly time for pitchers. And you know who has exactly the same kind of profile that needs to adopt exactly the same type of philosophy? Kerry Carpenter, who just is not swinging at enough strikes anymore. A little too aggressive. Needs to figure out how he's being pitched. Needs to be willing to take a few more pitches. Needs to have a little more patience. I think his production would improve dramatically if he did this. I think he's less patient than he's ever been. So, two guys big to the Tiger lineup, and both need to improve their pitch selection. Kerry Carpenter had 3 home runs in a game against the Sox earlier this week. It is the bigger story of this lingering hamstring issue. You touched on it quite a bit previously. Is it as bad as we think it is? Or heck, he's playing right field and he seems to be maneuvering pretty well. He does seem to be a little bit constrained on the bases, but what's the long-term prognosis for Kerry Carpenter's hamstring?
Yeah, I'm going to go to the medical report here and just look at Kerry Carpenter's past. He's never been healthy for a full season in his MLB career. Left lumbar spine strain in September 2022. Right shoulder sprain in April 2023. Lumbar spine stress fracture in May 2024. All of those injuries sent him to the injured list. He also dealt with a left hamstring strain in spring training in February 2024. Left hamstring injury in Game 4 of the ALDS in October 2024, and right hamstring soreness in April 2025. And now here we are again. He has right hamstring tightness in June 2025. I've said the word hamstring a lot, right? Like, this is an issue for Kerry Carpenter. Right, left, the hamstrings are an issue. You go back and, you look at where things have been since spring training of 2024. It has been all hamstrings since then. He played the outfield May 31st against the Royals, and then he did not play the outfield again until Friday, June 6th against the Cubs. He was scratched from a game against the White Sox because his hamstring wasn't healthy enough to play the outfield. And then he played the outfield for the second time in 3 days on Saturday, June 8th. But if you watch him run the bases, like you said, he did not look healthy on the bases. He said as much after the game. He's being cautious on the bases. He's still fighting through the hamstring issue, but he doesn't expect to miss time. I'm just saying, it looks like Kerry Carpenter's hamstring is hanging on by a thread. We'll see how this week goes, but I'm monitoring this situation very closely because you've got to keep Kerry Carpenter healthy. He's one of the most dangerous left-handed hitters in baseball. I respect him for trying to play through this. I totally do. But Mark, it is June 9th. We are playing for October, right? And if Kerry Carpenter is going to keep running himself out there time and time again, mending an ailing hamstring, and the Tigers can't even get him in the DH spot again, it's part of their lineup construction that's a problem. There is a world in which Gleyber Torres plays third. Colt Keith plays third, where you can get Kerry Carpenter off his feet. He needs to be a full-time DH. He is injury prone. He has never once stayed healthy for a full season in his big league career. And now he's injured right now. And he's playing through it, and I commend him for it. But I don't know how the Tigers are going to manage this. I mean, it is June 9th, and we have a long ways to go until we get to October. The good thing is, Tigers are out front in the standings. They're in a good spot. If Kerry Carpenter needs to shut it down for a period of time, even if that is a month or so, that's okay. The Tigers are going to be fine. I mean, you look at Casey Mize, he had a hamstring injury last year that kept him out for 2 months. You don't want that to happen in August, do you? That happens in August. You're looking at missing September and maybe most of October. Like, that's not good. So I think the Tigers probably should be proactive on this, just to be careful and to be safe, because you do not want to lose Kerry Carpenter. Like I said, one of the most dangerous hitters against right-handed pitchers. And he does have some flaws in his swing right now, but when he is on, he is as dangerous as anybody. We saw that in the game against the White Sox, where he hit 3 home runs. You've got to keep Kerry Carpenter healthy. I'm a little bit concerned. Mark, where are you at on the hamstring? I mean, you've seen him run. You've heard him talk about it. Do you worry that maybe this could become a long-term issue that puts him on the shelf? Or do you think he's just miraculously, going to heal up?
I think that the Tigers will pick and choose their spots to try to give him extended rest. And if they have to IL him for 10 to 15 days, they will. I trust they know a lot more than Evan Petzold and Mark Gorosh know. As far as discussing injuries, let's talk about 3 other pretty important injuries to the Detroit Tigers. Matt Vierling got a shot in his shoulder. Reese Olson also received a shot in his hand. And then we have Alex Cobb, who is yet to demonstrate any capacity to do much of anything besides throw some pitches. Heaven forbid he had to cover first base. Update me on those 3.
Yeah, Alex Cobb actually not allowed to cover first base. That's a rule the Tigers put in place for his rehab assignment. I'm not kidding. You think I'm joking, but I am not. No, the D has been sidelined since before spring training with a right hip injury. Signed him 1 year, $15 million. He has not pitched in the game for the Tigers, but he has now pitched in 2 games for High A West Michigan on a rehab assignment. He threw 24 pitches in his first game, then 34 pitches in his second game. He hasn't allowed an earned run. However, he did allow an unearned run, but he's clearly pitching through pain. It's bad. Like, it looks really bad, especially when he completes his delivery and he lands with his left leg and then swings his right leg around. Like, he just seems stuck on the mound when he's completing his delivery, and he grimaces often as he walks off the mound. It's just not great. And the Tigers, again, like I said, they are not allowing him to exert himself on defense. So he is not allowed to cover first base on ground balls to the right side of the infield. They have literally told the first baseman in High A West Michigan, you need to, position yourself defensively differently when Alex Cobb is on the mound, because he is not allowed to cover first base. And that's scary, because that is not going to fly in the big leagues. So does something miraculously get better? I'm not so sure. Like, he's expected to make a 3rd rehab start, but I'm not sure where this is going. Like, he looks like he's in pain pretty much all the time. He's not allowed to move his body other than his throwing motion. He's received a ton of hip injections. He's been injured since before spring training. Like, I just don't see how this holds up at the big league level. And I commend Alex Cobb. He's 37 years old. He was planning on retiring, and then Scott Harris waved $15 million in his face and pulled him out of retirement. I'd take the money too if I were him. He's a badass for trying to pitch through the pain that he's in. But again, I just don't see where this is going. Like, it's June 9th. This isn't miraculously going to heal. It is what it is. And I don't think it's going to lead to Alex Cobb pitching for the Tigers, but we'll see where things go. It sounds like he's going to go back out there for a 3rd rehab start, and he's going to keep trying to pitch. So more power to him. We'll see where this goes, but it hasn't been great. Matt Vierling, right shoulder inflammation. He's been dealing with this shoulder injury since the middle of February. He was shut down in late February, rehab for 3 months, returned for 4 games, re-aggravated his shoulder. He visited Dr. Keith Meister recently. Keith Meister is the expert on Tommy John surgery and elbow injuries, but he just went there to check up on his shoulder. He was not checking on his elbow, just the shoulder. And apparently it's just inflammation in his shoulder, no structural damage. That's a good sign. So he received an injection to get rid of the remaining inflammation. He began throwing on Sunday. He's going to build up from there. We got no timeline on Matt Vierling. He's not so sure how long this is going to take, but he is going to try to slowly but surely build up that shoulder and get back into games. Probably going to need another rehab assignment, and then eventually he'll come back and play for the Tigers, and we'll see how long he lasts. Hopefully it's something that it truly is, just some inflammation. And if it's just inflammation and he kicks it and he's all good, awesome. That is the best case scenario. And he got the best news possible from Keith Meister too. Like, hearing that there's no structural damage, just inflammation. That's a really good sign for Matt Vierling. We'll see where this takes us. As for Reese Olson, right finger inflammation. He's got it in the ring finger. He has not pitched in the game since May 17th. It is now June 9th. He's been throwing bullpen, so he's maintained his arm strength. That is a good thing. But the Tigers will not let Reese Olson start a rehab assignment until he's able to throw his changeup without any pain. So far, he still feels pain when throwing his changeup. He recently got an injection to flush out the remaining inflammation in his finger. He threw his last bullpen Saturday, but he still did not throw any changeups. He's going to incorporate his changeup into catch play in the coming days, and we'll see if he still feels that irritation or not. There's no timeline for his return, but once he's able to throw his changeup, I expect him to immediately begin a rehab assignment. Pretty close to immediately, because once he can throw that changeup, he should be all good. And it could be a one-start rehab assignment because he's maintained his arm strength by throwing all of his other pitches. He just needs to be able to throw that changeup. So once he can throw the changeup, I can see the Tigers sending him out on a rehab assignment pretty much immediately. And then before you know it, Reese Olson could be right back in the Tigers starting rotation, but he's got to feel comfortable throwing that changeup. So far, it hasn't happened yet, and we can all hope that it happens sooner rather than later.
All right, so let's first talk about Reese Olson. I tweeted out some information, and for those of you that don't know where to find me on Twitter, which is pretty shocking, it's Sports5176 at Days of Aurora Pod. I tweet out all kinds of fun stuff all the time, or I'm mean to you. One or the other. It's fun both ways. But Reese Olson, F-WAR, second on the team in pitching F-WAR, third on the team in baseball reference WAR. The answer is we miss Reese Olson. He was dealing. He was absolutely dealing. Let's get the finger better. The changeup was the best changeup he's ever had. He threw it more often than anything. It's probably why he's on the disabled list. So we do miss Reese Olson. We hope that injections do help it. As somebody that's pretty fluent in injections when it comes to shoulders and elbows and all kinds of stuff. And I also have my buddy Tiger Mike who takes a few injections in his knee. Oh, injections are a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing, especially when they work to their maximum. If you've ever had them, it is just so much relief packed in those injections starting on day 2, 3, and 4. The question is, do they do their job so that it's on day 8, 9, and 10? We're going to find out for both Matt Vierling and Reese Olson. I don't think Alex Cobb ever throws an inning for the Detroit Tigers. I understand the risk. It was not one of their best choices. Probably the Detroit Tigers' arguably best prospect, if his name wasn't Kevin McGonigal, Bryce Rainer, sustained an injury last week, looked pretty ugly. Looked a lot like two other injuries that have occurred to Detroit Tiger left side infielders in the past few years, Colt Keith and Carson Rucker. He is getting surgery probably within the day. What can you tell us about all this? Because Bryce Rainer is a gem, an absolute gem of a prospect, Evan. So tell us what you found out.
Yeah, it's really disappointing for Bryce Rainer. His 2025 season is over. Number 3 prospect in the Tigers farm system, according to MLB Pipeline. I would argue it's Kevin McGonigal 1, Bryce Rainer 2. That's how it goes on my list. Bryce Rainer is a really good baseball player. He's been compared to Corey Seager. He's the real deal. He has a chance to be great. But his 2025 season is over, going for right shoulder surgery. He injured his right shoulder on the bases. He dove back into first base on a pickoff attempt that happened in the 4th inning, Tuesday, June 3rd, playing for Low A Lakeland. He got multiple opinions from doctors. Turns out dislocated the right shoulder, and he elected for surgery. The right shoulder is his throwing shoulder, so he's got to get that better. He's got to mend that before he's able to come back. The Tigers expect him to be a full participant in 2026 spring training. That is the good thing. He will be back, but it's going to take some time, and his 2025 season is over, which is a real bummer because Bryce Rainer, what he was doing was just incredible. Hitting .288 with 5 home runs, 20 walks, 33 strikeouts in 35 games for Low A Lakeland. It was an .831 OPS. He played all 227 innings on defense at shortstop. He is expected to stick at shortstop. His average exit velocity was 92.1 miles an hour, which would rank among the top 50 MLB players in 2025. He hits the ball extremely hard. He can play shortstop. He can draw some walks. He limits strikeouts. He's got some power. Bryce Rainer is the real deal. He is really, really good, and he's considered the Tigers' shortstop of the future. I talked to Matt Vierling, Parker Meadows, and Wencio Perez about Bryce Rainer. Because if you remember, when Parker Meadows, Wencio Perez, and Matt Vierling were coming back from their injuries and they were on rehab assignments, they went down to Low A Lakeland and they played 2 games down there. And they got to watch up close Bryce Rainer play. They got to talk to him in the clubhouse. They got to see him interact in the dugout. And then they obviously got to see what he does on the field and in the batter's box. Parker Meadows told me he has a professional routine, one that Parker Meadows says he did not have at 19 years old. Bryce Rainer, the way that he goes about his business day in and day out, like an MLB player. That's what Bryce Rainer is doing right now from a routine standpoint. He'll always have that to fall back on. Wencio Perez says he can hit and he can play shortstop. Wencio Perez immediately said, yeah, he hits the ball hard. He can play shortstop. And Wencio Perez says, I'm a former infielder. I know what it takes to play shortstop. I mean, Wenzel Perez, he was a shortstop at one point, and then he had to move to the outfield because he wasn't a shortstop. But Wenzel Perez says, I know a shortstop when I see a shortstop. Bryce Rainer is a shortstop. And then Matt Vierling, talked to him. That was awesome. Matt Vierling says that he has California cool vibes, just like Bryson Stott of the Philadelphia Phillies. He says that Bryce Rainer is a good human being, and he looks like a really, really good player. Matt Vierling is very high on the character of Bryce Rainer, which when Matt Vierling has something good to say about your character, you're all in on that, because Matt Vierling, if there's a character test, Matt Vierling is like A+, 100 percentile when it comes to the character. And for him to say that about Bryce Rainer, California cool, great guy. I love to hear those kind of things. The Tigers put a lot in Bryce Rainer. First round pick, number 11 overall in the 2024 draft out of Harvard Westlake High School. Left-handed hitter, 6'3", shortstop, the real deal. He had a great season. It's come to a close earlier than expected, but you got 3 big league players saying that this guy's going to be the real deal. The numbers tell us he hits the ball extremely hard, even compared to big leaguers in 2025. And we also hear he's going to stick to shortstop. This seems like a really, really good player for the Tigers moving forward. I'm super high on Bryce Rainer. Good on him for having a great first season. It sucks that it ended early. Hopefully everything goes well with surgery and he's able to come out of it just fine. He has his full range of motion. We all hope for that, but we'll see where things go. But Mark, I mean, come on, man. Bryce Rainer in 2025, kind of what were some of your thoughts from watching from afar as you saw clips? Shout out Tigers Minor League Report for bringing those to us.
I don't fanboy players too much. I fanboy Bryce Rainer. What a kid. What skills. My buddy Brian Sikowski used to be prominent in Perfect Game. Watched him from the time he was a sophomore. Told me he improved just an astounding amount from the time he was a sophomore in high school to the time he was a senior. Brian's now the recruiting coordinator for Duke University. Deep in the College World Series. He knows what he's talking about. Really sad to see his season come to a close. My only thoughts about Bryce Rainer right now is I'm sad he's not playing. All right, it's time to get the heck out of here. I'd like to remind everybody to please rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and especially YouTube. You can always find us embedded in every Evan Petzold article at thefreep.com and wherever you listen to podcasts. I'd like to thank the editor of the Free Press, Nicole Avery Nichols, our producer, the Magic Man, Robin Chan, my amazing grandsons, the spectacular mommy of the year, Savannah Petzold. And until next week, peace.